Well, what's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where today we're going to be talking about the press conferences, right? The press conferences from Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen. They talked to the full media at the Combine, and they had their own local media sessions. So all in all, I think it ended up being right around 35-40 minutes worth of interviews. And, the way they do things, a lot was said, but nothing was said at all. But there was some stuff coming out. I'm sure you guys have seen the other YouTuber. I know I saw Bring the Juice and Locked On Colts already had videos on this. I'm a little later to the party here, but day job being what it is. So, in my opinion on everything that they talked about, or some of the bigger notes that they talked about, I got the depth chart here pulled up just so I can remember everything and go through everything. And of course, starting with Anthony Richardson, the quarterback competition, open competition for that quarterback position, and who are they going to bring in? That's the big question. I know the guys in the syndicate, specifically Lions syndicate and Broncos syndicate. We were talking about it, last night and early today, and it just seems like Daniel Jones seems like a really good fit for the situation where we very clearly still want AR to win the job and want him to be the guy that has that starting position going into 2025. So with that in mind, it's like, well, will they bring somebody in that they know is really going to push them enough that AR might not win the job? And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. They're not going to be able to see any of the players until April 21st. They can't get their hands on the players till April 21st is what Shane Steichen said. So it's going to be a little while. But at the end of the day, I think their choices for the Colts and who they bring in. We've already had the conversations about who we're going to bring in. We are going to put together the video of your guys' suggestions and what the cap is going to have to look like. But for all intents and purposes, open competition is what's happening. And it has to happen. You have to bring in guys from outside of the building. Like all the open holes, this is the year you really just can't bring your own guys back this time. Like a lot of the guys leaving, it's like, well, it's probably for the best for both sides. It's probably for the best. The guys that have been here obviously haven't won anything. And, from our point of view, we just have to get fresh blood in the building. And I think that's going to be good for everybody overall. Having some extra competition for AR is good. We saw what competition did to Alec Pierce. Everything we thought Alec Pierce could be, and he showed up in a big way this year, had over 800 yards. We had 3 receivers over 800 yards. My prediction early in the season, I couldn't find the exact video and I couldn't find an exact spot in a video, but I did have a prediction for all 3 of our top receivers to end up with over 800 yards or over 1,000 yards, something like that. Possibly 1,000 yards, but definitely over 800, I think is what I said. But I had A.D. Mitchell in that instead of Alec Pierce because I thought the competition coming in would win the position. Alec Pierce shows up, and of course, A.D. Mitchell struggles. Bound to happen. Young receivers, a lot of young receivers coming struggling. We'll see, can he get better through his offseason and what's going to happen with him? We have competition in that room. You would think A.D. Mitchell going to continue to get better. Anthony Gould going to continue to get better with him really being the 5 as of right now. So going forward, bringing competition in everywhere is going to suit the team. But obviously, Anthony Richardson is a massive part of that. And what's going to happen with him? Again, they want him to work out. As a fan, I want Anthony Richardson to work out, bro. He's so young, especially compared to quarterbacks that have come in the league with him that came in this year, quarterbacks coming into the league this upcoming draft, still older than Anthony Richardson. He's so young. If he can figure it out enough, he doesn't have to become Andrew Luck passing the ball. Just think how Cam Newton was never the prototypical passer, but his gifts, we have a better record with Anthony Richardson than without Anthony Richardson since he got drafted. So for all the ups and downs, even while he's playing, we still have a better chance of winning because he makes plays. The wow plays that he makes. Some people just can't do that, man. Most people can't do some of the things that he can do. He's a game changer. Him and Jonathan Taylor on the field together, game changing. Okay, so if he can figure out the passing just enough, he doesn't need to be 65% completion. Let's just go up to let's go to 58 60. 58 to 60 in 2025 with what he brings as a runner, and we can work with that going forward, right? It's not like Josh Allen became Josh Allen just in that second year. He got better, took a massive step from year one to year two, but also continued increase from Josh Allen as a quarterback to where this past season, everybody always talked about his turnovers. He stopped turning the ball over. Like, growth happens. Growth will happen. And I have faith that AR, if he really wants to be great as he continues to mature, we've talked about that so much here on this channel. Anybody that's new, man, if you're 25 or older, especially if you're a man that's 25 or older, who that's pretty much all that watches this channel, but there are some women, but if you're 25 or older, and this probably does happen both genders, you know the growth that happens in your early 20s. You go to 30. Some of you might also understand the growth that happens between that time period, okay? Anthony's going through a lot of that. Again, he's only 23 years old. He's going to figure it out. I have faith that he'll figure it out. And of course, we'd be ridiculous not to stick with Anthony through his rookie contract. Now, he's going to have to perform and have to be able to stay on the field for us to go with his fifth-year option, because that's a large chunk of money for the number 4 overall pick. If he's not working out, you cut bait after 4 years, or you try to do some sort of re-sign, right? Let his deal run out. Don't pick up the fifth-year option. Try what I would guess, but hopefully he just works out. We pick up the fifth-year option. We see a good enough growth that picking up the fifth-year option makes sense. That's what I hope for this upcoming season. Again, competition is good. This is gonna be good. Now, if he loses his job, not good, right? Especially if he's not the starter week one. That'd be crazy. So obviously you don't want that to happen. You just want whatever the Colts do to help make Anthony Richardson better. That's the goal at the end of the day. Just make Anthony Richardson better, however that happens. And I think through this offseason, he's finally going to be able to do that. He doesn't have to rehab. He doesn't have to train for the combine and then go straight into mini camps. He can work on continuously getting better. And I think that will pay dividends through this. There's talk about running back. Not something that came up in the press conference, but we do have an interview scheduled for Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, and the Oklahoma State running back. Not sure of his name. I have it saved somewhere, and I haven't quite started looking into all these guys. But those are 2 running backs that so far I'm hearing about. So obviously there's interest in us going to the draft for a running back. And it seems like the Colts front office is thinking just like Colts Nation, where, hey, 2025 draft, there are plenty of running backs in this draft. Let's go ahead, draft a guy to pair with Jonathan Taylor going forward. We missed out on getting Braylon Allen, but we built up the offensive line that we're going to take into the future now this year with more running backs coming out. Ashton Jeanty may be a long shot, but there is another video to be had there. I do want to go more in depth on that and kind of why I think doing something like going Ashton Jeanty in the first round, maybe not the worst idea of all time, but we'll talk about that. That's a conversation that will be happening soon. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you have notifications on so you get notified when that video and others come out. But going forward here, not really much to talk about in terms of wide receivers. And we kind of already hit on all that. Tight ends, of course, it was mentioned, hey, we got to go after a tight end. Of course, they're not going to give anything away on who we're looking at in free agency and what we might do if we're going to get somebody in free agency. We're going to get somebody in the draft. Where are we going to get them? They're not going to give away that information, but they do acknowledge, hey, tight end position of need. We need to get that figured out. We need to find a real playmaker. And just them acknowledging that is good. Figuring out what we're going to do with the offensive line. Chris Ballard said that he's talked with Ryan Kelly. He's talked with Ryan Kelly's camp. Nothing about an extension yet, but we'll see what happens there. I just feel like as we go forward, the writing's on the wall. We have our guys of the future, in my opinion. So I think it just makes sense not to re-sign a veteran when you're already looking to be able to find cap space however you can find it. I think Ryan Kelly not coming back. Will Fries, it'll be interesting. Honestly, could be good filling a hole. Mark Lewinsky, I think, would be good filling a hole. Maybe we go down the road of possibly bringing him back. Wouldn't be mad about that. But either way, that right guard is really the position that we're going to be focused on, because Braden Smith, now I don't. We've talked a lot ever since I took over this channel. Talked a lot about Braden Smith and possibly getting him out last year in 2023 and in 2024. We have the same conversations. Whatever's happening for bro in his personal life, like there are people that say some wild things just because they don't want him on the team. Listen, man, I hope whatever he's going through, man, I hope he comes out on the other side of it. Everybody is going through their own things. The human element comes into this. So as long as you're in the comment section, we can talk about Braden Smith not being on the team. But anything about his personal life and he stepped away from football and blah blah blah. Like he had to do what he has to do. It's obviously a very serious situation. So we're gonna stay away from that portion of it. Right? We're gonna chill on that portion of it. But it does. I mean, I think the writing's on the wall for him to also not be a Colt going into 2025. Now, how does that happen? Of course, with whatever's going on in his life, being as serious as it is, the optics, right? You trade a guy or release a guy going through some personal turmoil. The optics would look bad. I know from Chris Ballard's point of view, it's probably really difficult. Somebody you probably have somewhat of a personal relationship with, somebody you've taken a chance on, somebody who was here during the Frank Reich time and has been through the ups and the downs of this team and rode it out, played through injury, dealt with other injuries that had to keep him out. Like it's going to be whatever happens with Braden is going to be it's going to be a tough decision to either you keep him and you hurt your salary cap, you have an avenue where you could open up some space, you have a guy who can take over. What's going to happen with Braden? That's going to be very interesting from a roster building standpoint. And right now, it just feels like Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, Braden Smith, going to be guys probably not on the team. Mark Lewinsky not. So we're going to have to figure out what we're doing with depth. Obviously, and Chris Ballard said as much. Like you got to have, 6 to 8 guys who can get in and play because injuries are going to happen. So how are we going to build that? We had good depth this last season finally. How are we going to build that while not breaking the bank on the offensive line? Because the defense, we need to build it how Lou Anarumo needs it built, right? And crossing over to the defense, there really wasn't a whole lot of major stuff. Obviously, he was asked about Latu, and obviously, I mean, saying exactly what you thought they'd say about Latu. Great player. I think there's some things that he can get better with. Chris Ballard acknowledged that, like, hey, there's some things like DeForest Buckner tried to talk to Latu at some point about, hey, you're still young in this. It took me a year or two to really figure out how to be a rusher in the NFL and how to put the moves together and how to work your matchup throughout the game. Like those things Latu has to work on. The rushing ability is there. It's putting everything else together, being heady in the NFL, figuring that out is what Latu really has to do. He also has to be on the field more. We can say whatever we want to say. He still had the highest pressure rate of anybody on the team. So I think a little bit of that is also like a little coach speak there from Chris Ballard, where he's just trying not to build him up too much publicly, trying to let him know, like, hey, there's still room to grow here. You got to keep growing. Going to be playing more. We need you to be even better. So we'll see what happens there with Latu. I assume he's going to factor in. And then you look over to Samson Ebicom. You almost forget about. I almost forget about him. And it'll be interesting. Seems like he's a guy you get rid of to help on the cap, but a guy that could come back and possibly be effective. Like, how is that going to work out? What do we decide to do with the way people normally are after they come back from a major injury like that? Major lower body injury usually takes them a year for their body to get right. They gotta going through the rehab process, right? You have to strengthen that whole side back up. And I've heard other people talk about in the past, other players talk about how, like, that first year, like you can feel being unbalanced, and being unbalanced is when you're going against the best of the best, is going to make things more difficult. And so we'll see what happens with Ebicom, man. Does he come back? Does he not? Seems like the writing's on the wall for him not to come back after an injury like that, and with the way his contract is. But for what he did for us in 2023, disappointing season, but was our best edge rusher. Was great throughout that entire season. So we'll see what happens with him. Whatever happens with him, just hope for the best with him, of course. And then going through the rest of this, I don't remember anything that they really talked about specifically that like isn't like common knowledge that you wouldn't think of. Obviously, we need to get better in the secondary. Chris Ballard saying, hey, it's just a coincidence that all of the defensive coaches that Lou Anarumo brought in were secondary guys. Lou Anarumo, a secondary guy. I don't know if that's really a coincidence. We need to get better in the secondary, so we'll see what happens. With that, we've talked plenty about it. Cornerback, safeties. We need to spend money in those areas. We need to bring guys in. That's why we need to open up cap space elsewhere. Okay, which is also again a video that we're gonna have. We're gonna be talking about your guys' picks for free agents that the Colts should bring in. We're also going to talk about my picks. We're going to figure out the salary cap. How does it have to work? Where would you guys be at? Where would I be at? We're going to talk about it and so much more. The combine has officially started, and there's going to be plenty to talk about coming up. Plenty of draft content coming up as well. Free agency starts in just a couple weeks, so subscribe. Make sure you have notifications on so you get notified anytime we drop any content on this channel. And of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.